I am 23 years old, turning 24 this summer. I always forget how old I am. And I went to Arbor Creek in like a long time ago. I don't even know. But I am an author, and that means that I write books full time. So my favorite part about being an author is when I get to come and like do school visits. And this is one of the things that I do a lot. And it's super fun for me because most of the time I'm like sitting in my house alone writing books and like talking to myself. And so it's cool to come and see like real people. So I really like that. But one of the things that I really love, obviously, is reading. So that's me with some of my books. So who here actually likes to read? Raise your hand. Okay, cool. So like the people that like to read are my friends. The people that don't, I hope I can change their minds. So besides loving books, I'm also a big animal lover. And I'm going to show you guys some pictures of my pets. And it's not weird. Like there's going to be a reason why. So this is Hurley. Wait. That's Hurley. Would you be my her first name? That would be awesome. Oh wow. Like turn it up. Oh, we're getting fancy. Okay, so all you have to do when I tell you to, you're gonna press that button right there. Super easy. Okay. Should I sing? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Alright. So that's Hurley. She's a German Shepherd. She follows me everywhere. On the next slide is Kai. And Kai has one blue eye, and that's going to be important later, so remember that. Then I also have Kimber, and Kimber is a real wolf hybrid. And I actually just had to give him to a new home like 2 days ago, so I'm kind of sad about that. And then the next one is Hedwig. Hedwig is a hedgehog. And the next picture is Hedwig getting a bath, which is like the cutest thing ever. And then I also have Dan the Man. And he is like one of those big carriage horses, and he's fat. Then I also have Crookshanks. She's on a lamp. I'm a big Harry Potter person. And then lastly, I have 3 chickens, now 5. My husband brought them home in a cardboard box. So I was like, okay, cool. I guess we'll keep them. So I obviously went to Arbor Creek. Keep it there, I'll tell you. Yeah, and I really was not a big fan of school. For me, I was like always really awkward, really quiet. I don't think I spoke a single word. Whoopsies. I don't think I spoke a single word until my 8th grade year. Like honestly, I probably didn't. And for me, it was because I was a nerd. I didn't have a lot of friends. I obviously had a lot of animals growing up, and I just loved to read, and that was not cool when I was in school. And one of the things that I really hated about school was picture day. And I guess, like, when I was at Arbor Creek, we did picture day in that, like, back gym. Is that where it still happens?
Yeah.
This is so weird. And so this one year on picture day, I was, like, determined to make it awesome. So I remember, like, walking in, and there was, like, this hat kind of, like, sitting beneath this teacher's chair. And back then, her name was Coach Switzer. I don't think she's still here.
No, she was.
Okay, cool. Well, Coach Switzer was my girl. We were awesome. We were friends. And so I was like, hey, Coach, can I take that hat for my picture? And she was like, don't tell anyone I said yes. So I took the hat, and right when the photographer was about to take a picture, I put it on my head. And the next slide will show you that picture. So that was my Arbor Creek picture in 2005. I was like, yes, they're going to use it for the yearbook. But they didn't. They took another picture, which you probably have seen back there. Yeah, super cool. It's in the back. You can see it later. It's in the yearbook. It's terrible. Don't look at it. So for me, I just really didn't like school. I grew up on a cul-de-sac, like 2 minutes from here, probably in the same neighborhood as a lot of you guys. And I loved summer because that cul-de-sac, on the next slide, there were a bunch of kids that lived on it, and we were all best friends. That's me, that little teeny tiny thing. And we would hang out every summer, and it was super fun. And, you know, it was like 2 weeks into summer, I remember my 7th grade year, and we started doing this thing that I call the boring summer thing. And I'll get to that in a second, because like 2 weeks into summer, we had done everything there was to do. Like we had a lemonade stand, we washed cars, we all like put our money together, and we bought a parrot, and then 2 days later it like flew away. And then summer started to be like super boring, so we do the boring summer thing. And it's where one person's sitting there like, I'm bored, what do you want to do? And the other person's like, I don't know, what do you want to do? And then you just stare at a wall for 5 hours, right? And then you're like, summer sucks because it's super boring. And so then I started wishing I could go back to school until the month of July came around. And for me, July was like the coolest year ever because I come from a massive family. And on the next slide, it will show you me with some of my cousins. And then on the next slide, it'll show you me with some of my aunts and uncles and cousins. And so if you like tripled this picture, that would be my whole family. And they're like loud and crazy and sometimes rude, but they're great. I love my family and we're super, super close. And so every year we would all pack up and we'd caravan from Texas to Florida. And we'd stay in this house on the beach together for like the whole month of July. And it's super fun and we just did everything there was to do. And then even being on the beach, we started doing that like boring summer thing again. So then it was like, all right, well, let's go back to Texas because at least it's not here and it's somewhere different. But this one year, my 7th grade year, the parents pulled us aside and they're like, hey guys, we're going to go, before we drive home, we're going to go stay at your great aunt's condo for 5 days. And when we heard the words like great aunt, we pictured like this old haggard lady who might have been a witch or something. And so we were all like, oh no, we don't want to do that. But we didn't have a choice because we didn't have our driver's licenses. So they put us all in their cars and they drove us 2 hours away from the beach to this place called Innisbrook. And it was like this golf resort community. And I remember like as we drove in, I noticed like there were a bunch of people, but they all had like gray hair. So we were like, you guys took us to an old people community for 5 days, we're gonna die. And my oldest cousin Matt was like, guys, don't worry. Like there's this amazing pool here and it has these water slides and we're gonna hang out there for like all 5 days. It's gonna be awesome. And so I remember like right as he said that, there's like this crack of thunder and lightning and like a downpour of sideways rain. And we like drove past that amazing pool and the maintenance men were like hanging up a sign that said closed. So we drove past and we were like, no. Right? So then we were super upset. But we finally make it to my great aunt's condo, and like right before we walk inside, my oldest cousin Matt turns around in the car and he's like, hey you guys, you know someone died in the middle bedroom, right? And we were like, oh no. Right? So we get there, and the parents open up the door to this condo, and like the first thing is like the smell of mothballs and like old stuff. And I was like, that's the dead body. And then they like swung the door even wider, and there was this hot pink poodle statue, like this tall, just like sitting in the doorway staring at us. You're like, okay, that's creepy. And then we started exploring this little condo. It had like 3 bedrooms and a little side pocket living room and 1 bathroom. We started noticing that like the wallpaper was hot pink poodle wallpaper. The like big gold framed paintings on the walls were poodle paintings. There was like these poodle shaped pillows and there's one that had like poodle fur on it. So it was like, there's a dead body and a dead poodle. And we were just totally freaked out by this place. It was weird. And so me and my 10 cousins, they packed us all into this little side living room. We had to be there by ourselves. So I remember we're all like sitting in there because there's like 10 of us and the room is this big. And we're like, how are we supposed to lay down at night? There's no space. The parents were like, just stay in there. Because they were sick of us after 3 weeks on the beach. So we're sitting in there and it's day 1 and it's pouring rain and we can't go to the pool. And we start doing that boring summer thing. Just like, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do? And the little baby's like, I'm only 1 and I'm going to die in this poodle condo. And it was horrible. And so we started thinking, well, like, there's a VHS player here. Do you guys know what a VHS player is? Yeah. All right, so it's like the uncool thing that we had before DVDs and Blu-ray and stuff. And so there was a whole bookshelf, like probably this tall, of VHS tapes. So it's like, we'll just watch movies for 5 days. So we started pulling them out and stacking them up on a table, like trying to decide what we were going to watch. And I noticed like 20 tapes deep that they were all episodes of Barney. So we were like totally creeped out by this place at that point. And so I remember this is the point in my life where I realized that I like to tell stories. Because stories make weird or boring things a lot more interesting. So we're sitting there and I was like, gosh, we're literally going to die in here if I don't like come up with an idea to save us all. So I was like, hey, this is a pretty big building. Why don't we go out and explore the halls? So we left the younger cousins behind, and me and some of the older ones went out into the halls. Now this building was not a tall building, but it was a really long rectangular building. And it had lots of hallways and doors and all this crazy stuff, and so I figured I would map it. So we went out into the halls, we left that pink poodle statue behind, and we took a right and we walked for a while. And then we came to this like inner courtyard area. It was inside, like a square-shaped, just giant room. And there's this big glass elevator in the center. I was like, okay, cool. So we rode that up and down like 20 times and made some of the older people mad. And then we moved on. I mapped that down in this little nerdy journal I kept with me. So I was a nerd back then. I still am now. I just get paid to be a nerd, which makes it a little cooler, right? And so then we walked for a while, and it was super weird. Like, we started figuring out that this building was kind of like the Maze Runner, because you'd be walking and it would just be like wall. Then you go this way and there'd be like locked door, and you're like, what? So we like really wanted to figure out what was going on with this building. So finally we found this unlocked door, and it was the maid's quarters. It was super cool because like they had this vending machine that was free, and then another vending machine beside it where you like press the button, like an avalanche of ice comes out. And then there were like these big empty maid carts, and there was this like ladder that led into the ceiling that was locked, so we couldn't get on the roof. But I mapped all this stuff down. Then we kept exploring. We found a staircase like somewhere else in the building, and it was like this L-shaped nook underneath it. And if you crawled up under there, the stairs would be like over your head. And then I noticed like there's little gaps between each step, and I was like, that would be perfect for like one of my little cousins to like reach their hand through and poke someone's foot as they were walking down the stairs, right? And at this point, like I had this devious plan kind of brewing in my head, so I mapped that down in my nerdy journal. And they were like, okay, let's go back and tell the cousins. So we go back to the poodle condo, we put all 10 of us in that little tiny room, and we shut the door, and we're like, okay. I was like, you guys, I'm gonna tell you a story. We're in this horrible condo place, and it's super boring, and there's these evil maids that work here, and they're evil because they're super bored because it's summertime and so nobody's here. And so they're going to become evil and they're going to kill us all unless we go out and we mess with them. And we make them less bored, and in turn they will save us. Right? Because we're all going to be having fun. And they're like, yes, yes. And so, that's where I built my army of cousins. So I made them study my maps of this Maze Runner building. And then the next day, we packed a bag of snacks, and we went out into the halls. We split into a couple groups, and we started exploring. I took a pack one way, my sister took a pack the other. Some of the little kids got stuck behind that vending machine in the maid's quarters, so I marked that down as like potential hiding place. We had to take like 10,000 potty breaks, because little kids always have to pee, right? And so then finally we decided that we were going to start something that we called a mission, because we were an army, and it was time to start our missions in this war. This is a terrible story. Do not tell your parents, and don't do it. All right? Everyone shake your head yes. Now shake your head no, because you're probably all going to do it. So I had this cousin Andrew, and Andrew had these really big chubby cheeks, and these old ladies always liked to pinch them, and so it made Andrew kind of a devious kid. So he always did our dirty work. So Andrew went out into the rain with Landon, who was like shorter and had even chubbier cheeks, and they went to find something that we could use for our mission. Well, they came back, and their hands were cupped. And look down at your thumbnail and how small it is. They had these baby frogs, like 50 or 60 of them, that were like smaller than your thumbnail. And like live baby frogs. And I was like, yes, that's it, that's what we're going to use. So we started walking around the halls trying to find out how we were going to use these frogs for our mission. And then we saw it. It was at the end of the hall, like this big, shining golden beacon. And it was a maid cart. And there were these chocolates that were stacked on top of it. And we were like, oh yeah. So we took some of the chocolates and we swapped them out with the baby frogs. And then Andrew with the chubby cheeks took one of those pieces of paper out of my nerdy journal and he balled it up and he threw it into this open door and he was like, grenade! And then we all hid and waited. And we saw the maid poke her head out and then she screamed when she saw the frogs. And then she noticed us and she like looks at us and it's like these two red laser beams. And we're like, ah! So we all take off running down the halls, right? We're like sprinting, trying to, like, we know this Maze Runner building at this point, so we finally make it back to the maid's quarters, and like 3 of my cousins dive into the maid carts. I shoved like 6 cousins behind the vending machine, and then Andrew with the chubby cheeks like crawls up that ladder and he hangs in the shadows like Spider-Man. And then the maid comes like running through, and then she keeps going. And I was like, we are ninjas. So that was the day that we became the ninja cousins. And so we continued doing ninja-y, awesome-y things, and we found our way into that little L-shaped nook under the stairs. And we were sitting there, and we were catching our breath after running around this building all day. And we heard these footsteps that were coming down the stairs. And we all looked at Andrew with the chubby cheeks, and suddenly he's smiling. And his cheeks are getting bigger as he's smiling, and we're like, oh no, he has an idea. And we see this pair of feet appear over our heads, and we all look at Andrew, and he's like poised for the attack. And he's like smiling, his cheeks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then suddenly he goes, poke. And the person goes, ooh! And then they freeze. and then they start looking down. And we're like, this is the end. We're all going to die. I love you guys. And then the person keeps going. They never saw us. So we scurried around at the front of the building, and we figured out that it was so dark under there that you couldn't see us. You couldn't see 1,000 cousins. So we stayed there poking feet all day. And sometimes someone would be walking down the stairs and we'd slide a single goldfish under their foot and they go crunch. And they go, what? And it was epic. And so we camped out under those stairs overnight. And the next morning we were poking feet, having fun, and then we heard this noise. It was like, I'm gonna get him. And we were all like, oh. You guys know Paul Blart Mall Cop? Yeah, it was like the maids got tired of the ninja cousins, so they hired an army of Paul Blarts to come after us. So everyone was like, we can't do this. We're gonna go to jail. We're gonna eat cold macaroni for the rest of our lives. And our mom's gonna be the only one that visits us. It's gonna be horrible. We're gonna die in there. So everyone wanted to quit. And I was like, no. You guys, this is my story. You are my army, and this is war, and we are the final stand. And it is time to fight back. In reality, I was like, let's just make it back to the poodle condo without getting caught by Paul Blart. And so we split into groups, and we ran. And I remember my group was almost back to the poodle condo when suddenly my sister radioed in. She was like, I'm in quarter C7, I need backup now. And the baby that was with me was like, 10-4, coming at you, bro. So I threw the kid over my shoulder, and we're running to quarter C7, and it's that giant place with that big glass elevator that I told you guys about, remember? And so we see the Paul Blarts walking around, right? And my sister and her pack of cousins are in the corner behind a plant about to get caught. And I'm like, we gotta save them, we have to create a diversion. And so that glass elevator actually had a black bottom to it. And if you laid down Superman style in it, it looked like it was empty. So we laid down Superman style in the glass elevator, and we sent it up and down a bunch of times, and the Paul Blarts were gathered around in a circle Paul Blart is confused. And then Andrew with chubby cheeks would show his face and smile and wave, and the Paul Blarts would come running, and we would send it back up to the top floor, and everybody got free. Well, we eventually made it back to the poodle condo, and we slammed the door shut behind us, and we were like, oh, we did it. And then we turned around, and there was a line of parents what did you do? So we got in huge trouble. But it was awesome. Don't do it. And so that was a time in my life when I realized that I liked telling stories, because I created this whole thing, and we had so much fun because of the story. So then fast forward to 2009, I am a senior at Hebron High School. I'm about to graduate. I had scholarships. I was going to go off and do music school. I wanted to be a musician. And all my friends were about to go off to college too, and I remember right as I was going to leave, I started feeling really sick. I was feeling really tired all the time. And for the next 2-3 years of my life, I was mostly bedridden. Doctors had no idea what was wrong with me. I remember some days I was too weak to stand on my own. I had to have someone help me up off the couch. Some days I just didn't feel like washing my hair in the shower because my arms were too tired to just reach up and touch my head. And I had all these surgeries, and doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me, and I missed going off to college. And I remember one day I was laying in my bed feeling miserable, and I was on Facebook. And I was looking at pictures of my friends, which was a horrible idea, because they were all off at college being awesome. And I was laying in bed being a total loser. And I remember I started not liking myself anymore. I felt like I was worthless. And then I picked up a book, and it was Mockingjay. I finished reading it, and I remember the ending made me so mad that I threw it across the room, and I was like, screw that, I'm going to write my own book. So I started writing. And I started writing and writing and writing, and I couldn't stop. Eventually, I had finished an entire book, and that became The Murder Complex, which is this book right here. And it's about a world where the murder rate is higher than the birth rate, and everyone dies at night, and no one knows who is killing them or why. And then I started going on a tour. I finally got a book deal, and it was this crazy thing. I had become a published author, and suddenly my life had meaning, and it was because of stories, which was the coolest thing ever to me. And then The Murder Complex had been out for a while, and I was like, but I want to keep writing books. And so I wrote another book, and it became Balance Keepers, and that's the one I'm talking about today. And it's about this 11-year-old boy named Albert Flynn. And Albert has to go spend the summer in Herman, Wyoming with his dad. And Herman is kind of like that place where we were with the ninja cousins, where it's just a bunch of old people, and it's super boring. So Albert's dad is the town mailman, and they're sitting in the post office together, and Albert's super bored. He feels like he's going to die, until suddenly this little black dog walks in. It has an envelope in its mouth, and it's addressed to Albert. So he opens up the envelope, and there's a letter inside. And it's like, hey, Albert, I need you to go into the woods and follow this little dog named Farnsworth and find this thing called the troll tree. And he's like, okay, I have nothing else to do, so sure. So he follows this dog into the woods, and they find the troll tree. And it's this tree that's like literally like as wide around as 3 school buses are long, like this huge tree. And there's a door inside. So of course he opens it and he goes inside and he shuts the door behind him, and it suddenly disappears. And it's pitch black and he's stuck and he's terrified. So he reaches down and starts scratching the little dog's head. And on the next slide, suddenly the dog's eyes light up like 2 bright blue flashlight beams. You guys remember my dog Kai with the one blue eye? Yeah. When I was writing this book, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if her eyes lit up. So I just wrote it into a story. And so Albert follows this little dog deeper and deeper into this tree, and they figure out that it's actually a portal that leads to the core of the earth. And scientists have always thought that in the core, it's like hot, molten death stuff, but it's actually a school for kids called balance keepers. And when they get there, they get access to these magical powers, and then from there, they get access to these hidden realms. And when these hidden realms are out of balance, like if something is going wrong, then the surface world of Earth is also affected. So in book 1, Albert and his friends have to go into this realm called Calderon. It's like this fiery volcanic realm. And because this realm is out of balance, New York City above is being covered and covered in like mountains of ash. So everyone's going to die if Albert and his friends don't go in there and save the day. So that's what Balance Keepers book 1 is about. And I love like the adventure and stuff, but my favorite thing obviously is all like the cool magical creatures that I got to put in there. So on the next slide, I'll show you some of my favorites. There's like a bird that poops out gumballs, which is like really gross, but also kind of awesome. And then this like little dragon that sits on this dude's shoulder, and it kind of reminds me of those chickens that my husband brought home. And so when I finished writing the book, my editor was like, we're trying to figure out what the core looks like to you. So can you draw us a map of the world? And I was like, I'm great at drawing maps. I mapped out this whole building in 7th grade. And so I sent them on the next slide this, and they were like, what is that thing? They're like, is that a blown up picture of a microscopic germ, or are you just a horrible artist? I was like, oh, okay. So they hired an artist who drew the next slide, and then he took it one step further and turned it into that on the next slide. And that is actually the front of the book, and that's what the core looks like to me. Then they said, well, we want to know what you think the realm of Calderon looks like. So the artist drew, or I drew that on the next slide, and they're like, that's also not that great. So the artist drew the next one, and that is also in the front of the book. And then they took it one step further and said, well, what do you want the cover to look like? And I said, well, when they're in Calderon, they ride on this thing called a gilldactyl, and it's like half pterodactyl, half dragon. So the artist drew the next slide, and then he put it in color for the next slide, and that's the final cover. So it was really, really cool for me to suddenly have like this thing in my hand called a book, right? And I was like, I wrote it. Whoa. Like I did something with my life. And then they sent me the next slide eventually, which is the sequel to the murder complex, the Death Code. So then I have 2 books done for that series. And then a couple months later, they sent me the next one, and I had 2 books done for Balance Keepers. So suddenly I had 4 books written, and it was like, all of this came out of me thinking that I was going to do nothing with my life because I got sick. So my dreams for my life died, but stories became my new dream. And even if you guys don't like to read, who are the people that don't like to read? I'm just kidding, don't raise your hand. Don't do it. Even if you guys don't like to read, I promise you that you like stories, because when you hang out with your friends, you tell stories, right? When you play video games, it's a story. When you watch movies, it's a story. So stories can and will change your life if you just give them a chance. And one of my favorite things, you guys, we have a couple minutes and you can ask questions, but I'm on Instagram, and that's like where I do most of my like talking to people. So if you guys follow me, I try to follow everybody back, and I'm going to be able to announce like cool stuff and book signings and fun things. So please follow me, and I'll follow you back and like talk to me there, because I'm not going to have a lot of time for questions, but I can take a few right now if you guys have any. Oh, come on. You get a free bookmark if you ask me. Oh, you have one. Did I play an instrument? I was in choir in middle school, actually, but I have played the guitar since I was in 6th grade, so I still play an instrument, but I was not in band. Are you in band? Yeah. Band is cool.
So can you sing?
Yeah, I can. And no, I'm not going to sing right now. Anybody else have questions? Oh, come on. What's wrong with you people? You've been smiling this whole time, sweatshirt. So think of a question. All right? be really cool if I put that into the future. So it's set in Florida, in the Everglades in the future, and there's this girl, Meta, who lives on a houseboat with her family, and her dad has taught her to do everything she can to get home at night, even if that means killing people that get in her way. And then there's also Zephyr, who is an orphan, and his job is to scrape dead bodies off the street every Sunday, because everyone is murdered during the week. And Zephyr has this secret that he wakes up in the mornings and there's blood on his hands, and he has no memory of what happened the night before. So Meadow and Zephyr eventually meet, and really bad things happen from there. So that's what that one's about. And the sequel comes out in May. So I'm excited. Here, you get a free thing. So you can ask a question. Anybody else have questions? Yeah. Out of all of them, what's my favorite? That's like asking your parents who's their favorite child. And you know they have a favorite child, but they're never going to tell you. Because I've always sworn that my sister is my parents' favorite child. So I'm not going to answer that question. Because I love them all. I don't have a favorite. Yeah. Yeah.
Why were you quiet?
If I was awkward and quiet, why was I in choir? Because music is the universal language. And I was unafraid to sing. That's such a cheesy answer. Okay, right there.
What gave you the ideas to write balance
What gave me the idea for what?
keepers? To write balance?
For balance keepers? Have you guys read the Skeleton Creek series that Patrick Curtis? Will you pass that back to me? They're in the front, and there's like a whole shelf of Patrick's books actually right here. He's my mentor. And so we were talking on the phone together, and it's kind of like a brainchild. It's like an idea of both of us. And I was like, okay, cool. So then I wrote it. But Patrick's awesome. Check out his books because they're really good. But he's kind of the whole reason why I wrote Balance Keepers, because I wanted to do fantasy and I didn't know how to. So he just kind of walked me through it and taught me a lot. That's a good question. Yeah.
Have you ever read Percy Jackson?
Yes, I've read Percy Jackson. I actually consider Balance Keepers a mashup of Harry Potter and Percy Jackson because I was such a huge fan of both of those. So, pass that back to you.
What's the thing on the second book of the Balance Keepers on like the front?
The thing is, it's a lightning ray. It's like a giant manta ray that shocks people and paralyzes them. Yeah. Pass that back. Yes.
Have you ever read the book by Ryan Faulkner?
Have I read the what?
Ryan Faulkner?
I've read, yeah. Oh yeah. I read all the time. Super nerd here. So he's a great writer though. Yeah. Both of you, if you go fast.
Okay. What's your favorite book out of all the books?
My favorite book out of all the books ever. You're so mean. I'm just kidding. Probably Harry Potter. My phone case says I will always love Harry Potter. So I'm a huge fan of that. Did you get one? And then you. Did I just check? No, I didn't. In Balance Keepers, there's going to be 3, and if they sell really well, they're actually going to let me do 5. In Murder Complex, there's 2.5. There's also a little novella called The Fear Trials, and it's like 100 pages book thing, but I really wanted to write it right now. Fine. Okay, one more. Do we have time? Yeah.
What did you mean by that was some of your books?
Some of my books. So when you're an author, there's like a big joke that you get paid in free books instead of money. And so they send me books by the truckload. So not really, but every day there's at least 1 or 2 books on my doorstep, and I get them 6 months before they come out in stores. So I read them and then I tell everybody about them so I can help other authors be successful too. Because I like to make other people happy because I know book writing is hard to pass that through.
Now tomorrow, Lindsay will be at the Teen Read Festival, the big one that I've been talking about.
It's gonna be awesome.
In Irving. There's lots of authors there, but if you by chance can get to Barnes & Noble or there even, they're selling her book. We have 3 copies of the Balance Keeper. They're all checked out. You can always put that on hold. We'll get more. But if you would like to get an autograph, she will be there tomorrow. And I don't know, maybe you can have one if we collected them. Maybe at some point she can swing by an autograph. I don't know. But
Okay, before you guys go, I need to take a video selfie for Instagram. Okay, so here's the plan. I do this all the time. Keepers again.